Hello, my coffee is at home. Yep. Ah. Don't worry, coffee. I'll save you. My beautiful coffee. And now through the magic of television, I will get the coffee. Coffee. Yum. And I say I don't do editing. Ha. Ha, I say ha. Might have figured something out. I've been running the pocket chip for a while, carrying it around, keeping it alive for multiple days. It works extremely well. I'm also butting against the limitations, of course, but having something that's like 70% of the way there is a big step. So I'm very happy that it's working out well. The next step, of course, is to be dissatisfied. So, pocket chip's good. Pocket chip has good battery life. It doesn't have a big beautiful screen. Big beautiful. You know, it even has the touch screen. Man, it is so good. I should just buy like 3 more. I do have an extra pocket interface. I would just buy like three more chips, and then I would have to flash them all. No, never mind. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Android. So I posted Android, not Android. We're talking about not Android. So Mosh works great. Mosh is excellent. Mosh will cache all your keystrokes in your SSH connections when it loses connectivity, and it will reestablish connectivity from a completely different IP address with no issues. Absolutely brilliant. Wonderful stuff. That was weird. So I've been doing that on the pocket chip. So I'll have my terminal session is just always on, and then I alt tab to, you know, flip to that screen. Very cool. Otherwise, I'm just running Emacs and building interfaces for Emacs to the controls for the pocket chip. So within Emacs, you know, this is classic Emacs. You just put more things into Emacs because you have this. Emacs is just this front end for your inputs. That's it. You got input, you got displays, you have an interface to the rest of the computer through the shell commands. That's it. It's just Emacs. Emacs is your window manager. Emacs is your, it's not your X, but so I'm still having a pretty good time with it. But I know it's gonna die. And maybe the Raspberry Pi is going to die. Raspberry Pi is going to be around for longer than that. And frankly, if I needed to, I could buy 100 Raspberry Pi Zeros. Raspberry Pi is going to discontinue the Raspberry Pi Zero. Okay. So, I'm going to need 100 of those. Order quantity 100. Then you can just swap them out. Whoops. Slightly touch screening the pocket chip there. But I was messing around with, and you probably saw the video for the Raspberry Pi Zero with that little small display as a noodle pie, and that was pretty cool. And it would probably be even cooler with a hyperpixel. But I'm trying to test and prototype with what I have now. So the problem with that device was that the battery bank was not capable of putting out sufficient amps for me to be able to swap inputs and keep the Raspberry Pi, not the pocket chip, the Raspberry Pi from browning out. Again, all of this little niggling technical nonsense just makes me even sadder that pocket chip is gone, because pocket chip handled all of this. Man. So the idea is to be able to have this device that you can swap in as almost like a faceplate, a standalone kind of faceplate device. So it would have a battery, would have a display ideally, or a pop on and off display, and that's interesting. Yeah. A pop on off display, and then have a separate keyboard module that would be kind of supportive of the shape, so that you would type and take the module and go shook and just snap it right on. And it would ideally, well, it would have to connect via a female USB connector. So then the module itself, when you pop it off, is completely self-contained and has a female USB connector sticking on the side for easy access. So that battery bank was insufficient, clearly. If it was set up, see, that's the thing, is if you booted it up with the keyboard on it, it doesn't get the brownout. So then you boot it up with the keyboard on, with the device on, you interface with it, you set it up to do what you want it to do, and then once it's good, once it's going, you just unplug the keyboard. You can't plug the keyboard back into it, but it's like a one-way trip. Once you set it, it's just, that's what it is. It's doing that. So that's obviously less than ideal. We want to be able to keep the Raspberry Pi running. So that's what I'm getting around to, is that the Raspberry Pi would be running as a separate device, running Mosh and running Emacs, and just have an optional display. And then from that device, which would essentially be a battery with a Raspberry Pi attached to it, you would be ideally Bluetoothing to it, and I might actually have to update the firmware to or update I think I have to update the kernel to get Bluetooth 4 on it, because it was acting really weird with Bluetooth 4, and I'm not even sure it has it at this point. I'm gonna have to double check that. The pocket chip reacted the same way too, so I'm not quite sure what was up with that. Bluetooth 4 has some support issue. I did see some bugs in certain versions of the Linux kernel. It might have been fixed more recently than is possible to upgrade to for the pocket chip. But the Raspberry Pi has no such limitations, so we can upgrade that all we want and get the latest software on it for support for our latest hardware. So again, ideally Bluetooth, but not necessarily. So then we've got like I said, a Raspberry Pi that has this interface open on it and is ready for user input. So you turn on your Bluetooth keyboard, and that Raspberry Pi is connected to a battery sitting in your pocket, and then you type into your keyboard and interface directly with the Raspberry Pi. So again, this is blind blind typing, or I call it like a headless interface. With this layout, since you can switch back and forth, ooh, that's an interesting question. If I had a USB switching device on it, would it brown out? Because I think it shares the current across it. I don't know about that. I see different when the voltages get a little mismatched, it seems to do a brownout. So I don't know about multiple voltages, because the USB, yeah, see, I guess it would depend on what it's getting power from. I suppose the switching would come from whatever device it's actively plugged into, because you would be... I just drive over. Didn't see anything. You would be switching between two host devices, and your USB would be your keyboard would be a client device. I don't know, I might have to check that out. Because then you can just have the keyboard and build everything into the keyboard, which is doable right now. I just don't... If I could get the Bluetooth 4.0 running on the Raspberry Pi, it's kind of unnecessary at that point, though. It's just that... so the object there would be to have a keyboard that would type directly into the Raspberry Pi, so you wouldn't even have to mess with Bluetooth. And then you could plug it into a workstation and push the USB switching button, and now you're typing into the USB, typing into the workstation. It almost seems better to have just the whole device separate and self-contained. Okay. Well, that's no fun. Never had this happen before. There's a garbage truck going down a 2-lane, a center divided part of the road. Basically, the road gets down to 2 lanes in one direction, and the garbage truck is taking up both lanes to take out the trash, which is fine. It's just going super slow. There you go, he's all done. So functionally, I think I have a good workflow worked out. After that happens, if I could snap my fingers and have that, I would need audio, for some audible clues or cues, audio notifications. I don't know, everything else kind of falls into place after that. I would need one of those flat HDMI ribbon connectors, which is still fine. That's doable. So the object is to have this Raspberry Pi. It's basically a battery. I removed that large 5,000 milliamp hour battery from the Raspberry Pi 2B plus or 2B not to be plus. I don't know, the newer one, not the newest one. And I wanted to see if that would have the same brownouts, and I was not able to get it to brown out on the Raspberry Pi Zero. When I swapped, or when I recharged the power, it did not brown out, and it didn't even get a lightning bolt. It didn't even get low voltage. And when I swapped USB devices, no matter what I swapped in or out, it didn't have any brownouts. So the idea would be to have that Raspberry Pi with my user interface all set up on it and just awaiting user input. And then I can carry it around. I can either Bluetooth to it or plug directly into it with a keyboard, and flip the on button on the display, or not flip the on button and just interface with it directly that way. So then I can just grab a keyboard and, as quick as I can type, get stuff out of my head and into my tracking list. And once it's in that list, it's I think I've got a pretty alright workflow for keeping up on that list. It is getting a bit large. I might have to implement some kind of... Okay. Was almost totally blind. Might have to implement some kind of maximum, where I have to like archive stuff or just drop it off the list. I don't know. I need some kind of prioritization for it. But other than that, I am getting stuff done. I am moving things around. It's good. And that's for just a shared kind of terminal Emacs session, org mode session, or org file in an Emacs session. And then I can update it from other locations, or be viewing it in terminal through Mosh in Termux, or Tmux, or Termux actually. Termux will do all this. And I struggled for a while to find a valid excuse not to use a cell phone, because this is a cell phone would solve almost all of the problems. It would have to be an Android 10 cell phone, and ideally it would have to have a bad ESN or bad wireless connection or broken SIM card, because without that network ID, it would be more useful to me without, ideally it would have no cell antenna at all, period. But I don't think I'm going to get that. But if I could have a pocket device, and this is getting into N900 or N810 territory, if I would have a device like that, it's rechargeable, has a screen, those devices actually have a built-in keyboard, super tempting. In fact, there's some cheap N810s that I might even just consider getting just to get. I think they need a special power connector though, so I don't know. I'm definitely zeroing in on something. And to be able to carry around... So this is the big reveal, I guess. So amazing. To be able to carry around something like this, and to have all your connectors on this side, and to be able to snake a USB cable into there and just plug straight into it from the top side, and your power switch and your LCD readout for battery life. This would be brilliant. Add in the ability to get this right about here. You've got a really nice design. But even just this by itself, wrapped up a little bit, would be pretty tempting. I could actually probably reduce this. Okay, so yeah, pretty cool. And very doable. So we'll see.